So for the past year and a half, I've been working on a story that's a little bit longer. It's about 75 or 80 pages, so it's at least publishable length you could possibly have. We trek out for 20 minutes or so, and on the way there were trees and shrubs and poison ivy. There was plenty of garbage too, but the weeds had grown up around it. Tall, thin, dull brown lines with gray rainbows of washed out plastic at their base. It was the natural world, but it felt unnatural, almost suffocating. I had applied for jobs from March through May and after graduation. Who bites it all? I graduated with a major in American Studies from a private liberal arts college, no substantial reputation, hoping it would qualify me for work of some kind. It turns out that work is spike job. A friend of my mother's called the house to see if I found anything. He worked in personnel at Eastville and mentioned that he'd like to hire help for the maintenance of way crew. The gang that traveled around the state to replace and repair railroad ties. He didn't know if it could be permanent, but it would be steady through summer at least. This would give your son, he said, a chance to see how the other half lives. I took the job and made enough to get my own place. Now I'm going to jump ahead. The narrator goes, this only scene that really takes place off the railroad, and he goes to a party that Kentucky is having for one of his kids' birthdays. The whole story only takes place over a week, and this is Sunday. On Sunday, I went to the get-together Kentucky and his wife had, by only socializing with trainmen on the tracks. I had no intention of going, but his wife, as he told me, was fixing up something nice. She served baked catfish and donut holes. They were both a bit soggier than I would have liked, but I ate to be polite because I had no food in my apartment. Kentucky whispered to me that the secret ingredient was poison. There were just the three of us at first. His kids played outside, small, blonde, and fair like their old man. His wife's coloring was darker, but just a bit more than translucent. She was pretty, but worn and rough, and a little startling. When I spoke with her, I did see she was happy. Found her on Craigslist, he told me, at which she smacked me. He grabbed my shoulder and said, don't ever, ever, get married. She smiled now and smacked him again. In their home, there was pieced together wood flooring, a new kind that snaps in place. He had done it himself, and you could tell. This was in the living room, which still had some plastic on the windows for the wintertime, and a big flat panel television. Into the kitchen, the floor was bumpy and lopsided. Cracked linoleum covered most of it, and Kentucky remarked, this, Professor, is what you'd call work in progress. I couldn't decide what in progress meant, I told him, and ate a donut. Kentucky's wife showed me the gas logs they'd invested in for the coal mine. She was proud of them, but not boastful. Their furnace had electric controls, and from Kentucky had figured that if the power went out, they'd have the gas logs on hand to keep them warm. They didn't have a fireplace, so they set the logs in the corner of the living room. They'd used them once previously. I kept telling Danny, she said, that we're supposed to vent those things somehow, because we don't have a chimney. She pointed towards a carbon monoxide detector fixed to the ceiling and hanging loosely. It kept going off over those couple of days, she said. Rather than vet anything out, he just kept changing the batteries. We went through 3 sets of double A's. Well, if you gotta go, I told her, you might as well be warm. And she laughed. Hey, watch me and my wife. Kentucky slapped me on the back and kept his hand in it. His grin was wide and genuine. Tobacco didn't smack in his teeth and gums at home, and he smelled like a fresh shave. His goatee was neat and trim and sat atop a flap under his neck that would jiggle just a little most of the time. He's got a college degree, he said, pointing at me, and showed us, and so does she, now pointing at his wife. She was a substitute teacher, I found out. The outside of the house was vinyl and new. On the side patio, he built himself. There were iron poles painted heavy white with Rust-Oleum. I grabbed one and went to Kentucky. If it's worth protecting, it deserves Rust-Oleum. They were holding up a roof of sheet metal, a stainless kind that could last better than half a century. You know what you call this? He wasn't asking. 1950s Italian American. He had just invested some $5,000 or so overtime dollars into a Chevy Camaro to make it look like the race car of some NASCAR driver, like my father's son or mine. It sat in the driveway as trophy, looking like a race car too, a professional one with Budweiser advertising along the sides. In it, they'd been to Washington, D.C. with the children that summer. They drove the 7-hour trip in 5, according to Kentucky. His wife's head shook a double behind him, serving as a appropriate counterbalance. Believe this, he said. Washington, D.C. He let the words marinate. Washington, D.C. He shook his head up and down without emotion. Nation's capital. I suppose I was agreeing. President's there. Black president, but president just the same. He was only saying it for my youthful people's sake. If I'm right, tell me I'm right. My eyes told him that. He stretched the words out. You can't find a freaking person who speaks freaking English any freaking where they freaking go. This was his proclamation, a freaking one since the kids were there. He gave some pause and went on, talking nation's capital, nation's goddamn capital. He was bent down now, hands on his knees like it was too much to bear. As he bent, his t-shirt fell loose and his stomach hung out from the bottom. The blonde belly hair with the backdrop of flesh looked like a thick foam belt, some sort of flotation device. He went on. We go to the Smithsonian. He came back out with his wife. What's that big museum called? Smithsonian, she said. Smithsonian. We go to the Smithsonian. It was intentional, these mispronunciations. And all these gooks and spicks taking pictures. Gooks and spicks everywhere you look. He approached me like we were playing pretend now, him handing me a camera that didn't exist. Can you take my picture, please? His faux accent was hard to discern, but seemed more like a botched and terrible caricature of an Indian accent, not anywhere near as authentic as the terrible ones from terrible films and television shows. I don't know what the hell we're doing in this country, Professor. Letting any goddamn person in nowadays don't even speak the American language. A lot of jobs, I said, Americans don't want to do. Bullshit. Bullshit. He said it immediately and seriously, nearly overlapping my words, and his eyes sort of cut through. Bullshit. I'll dig any trench you got. He shook his head, big and exaggerated, swiped side to side, and his face reddened. Problem of America, all it is. I waited a beat and shifted my weight one leg to the other. Corporate guys in America, all it is. They're the ones who like cheap labor. My hand shook a little when I said it. I hated it. All right, Carl. Besides, assimilation among these immigrants is, I wanted to finish with, is at a higher rate than 20th century Americans. I remember that from some class, but he cut me off. Assimilation? Ha! Oh, that's rich. That is rich. If I make a little Marxist of my own, who am I going to believe? You, my own eyes. Browning's what I see. Groucho, I asked, so he knew I knew. Knew you'd say that. Chico. I stopped short of telling him about my often term called Marxist comedy from American England in the 20th century. He snapped back to standard Kentucky demeanor and said, of course, you is Italian. What would your folks say? How would they react? Say you was to bring a white girl home, a swarthy fellow like yourself. No, you'd probably be missing off in this on your ass. Concrete boots. He no longer had a camera in hand, but instead, fishing rod. I'd cast my line, big heavy cable line, looking for them big bottom-dwelling cats, and pull up the blue screen producer, all because he got some white dog. His boy was tormenting his daughter, and Kentucky chastised, finger to face, told you to stop dicking around. He turned back smirking, all on account of some white dog. Only a few of the trainmen showed up to the party.